Hello, IT and MSP Sandbox. It is another edition of the MSP Initiative Live. We're here on Thursday, February 10th. Like, before you know it, February's going to be gone. Really, honestly. Like, January, by the time you turned around, it was gone. February's going to be gone, too. It's going to be March, and you're going to be wondering how Q1 just disappeared from you. But before we get started, a few housekeeping things that we're just going to get out of the way because this is how we do what we do. So, MSPinitiative.com. Under sessions is every podcasted and video formatted session that we've ever done, including this one will be on there shortly after today's session. So make sure to jump on there and catch up on everything that's going on. We have our MSP community block party. The next one's coming up here in a couple of weeks, not even a little over 10 days. We're going to be down at the Zero Trust World on International Drive. So join us. If you're in the Florida area and you want to swing by, you're an MSP, submit a request for an invite and we'll get you there. Obviously, if you're going to Zero Trust World, and you can find information about Zero Trust World at zerotrustworld.threatlocker.com, who's sponsoring this event, so, this conference. Check it out. Otherwise, come out and hang out on a Monday night. We'd love to see you. Lastly is Channel Strong. This is our 8-week, not all contiguously, 8 separate week tours throughout the United States. Our first one's coming up at the end of March in Texas. So if you're in any one of these areas, obviously they're spread out throughout the year. We're hoping that we can come to your backyard and come out and grab a beer, grab a sandwich, talk shop. We'd love to see you. So that's all of our housekeeping. Without further ado, I would like to welcome for the first time ever the gentlemen who will introduce themselves from Green Cloud and Green Cloud Defense.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having us. Number one, we're excited to be here.
Listen, I've seen Green Cloud in the MSP channel for a long time. I'd love to understand a little bit more about you two, by the way. How did you get into the industry? A little bit of history about the company, how you guys got into this, Green Cloud Defense side, because I don't know if they're still the same entity, if they're separate. I'd love to understand what's cooking. And then we'll talk shop, because there's a lot going on. And quite frankly, we could probably do one of these episodes a day or more, and we only do 2 a week. So go ahead.
Right. Well, please stop me with questions. And so I'll introduce myself and then kind of kick around the idea about like how we came to be and a little bit about our background. Then I'll kick it over to my compadre, Steve Sims, who's on the line with us as well. So my name's Jonathan Philipsen. In the channel, everybody knows me as JP. It's easier to say and to pronounce, right? So I have been here at Green Cloud since 2013. I effectively run the sales channel here at Green Cloud. And when I say sales channel, you all are managed service partners. You all are our sales channel, if you will. So I manage our channel managers here at Green Cloud and am responsible for the strategy as well as the partner recruitment functions here at Green Cloud Defense as we know it. So I mentioned I started in 2013. Green Cloud, though, started in 2011 by literally 4 guys and an idea to serve the MSP space, the VAR space. They saw a void within it in terms of IaaS, backup disaster recovery, offsite backup. And then obviously this thing called Green Cloud has drastically evolved over the years. So since 2011 up until 2022, one thing has stayed the same, and that is the fact that we have sold exclusively through the channel partner community. So that's awesome, right? I mean, so hopefully that's a positive thing in everybody's mind. So along the way, the other thing that has always remained constant is our go-to-market strategy within those partners in terms of how we bill for our services. So one thing to point out, we don't do everything cloud. We're very specific in what we do. That cloud is a big, huge 5-letter marketing term, if you will. So we're very specific. So we offer infrastructure as a service, backup disaster recovery services. And by the way, to my friends at Datto, it is not to take anything away from the disaster recovery world that you all serve. We actually complement the Datto offering a lot and frequently, to be frank. So the disaster recovery services that people could actually leverage within Green Cloud are designed to replicate from a VMware infrastructure environment over to us. So we become the secondary data center, if you will. The IaaS, the DR, the backup, we also offer VDI, as well as a whole host of security services, which I'll let Steve talk about here in just a second. All of the services and solutions that we have and designed, they're totally meant to ingest into the partner community under a flat rated billing concept. So it's predictable billing. So if you wanted infrastructure as a service or servers in the cloud, so to speak, you're going to actually buy and consume those on a per unit basis, meaning CPU, gigs of RAM, gigs of storage, how much bandwidth you have. We don't care how often you're on those servers. We're not an elastic or a metered model. We believe the servers are yours. You're just using those on our hardware, right? So it's easy to predict and to communicate with your end users what the bill is going to look like with your margin on top of it. So once again, you control the margin, you control the client, the relationship. We are literally an augment of your team. So I mentioned Steve Sims is on the line with us. I'm going to let him introduce himself. He is our CISO here at Green Cloud, but we actually met Steve by way of an augment to our team. So Steve Sims, tell us a little bit about your background, kind of where you came from and how we all came to be, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, JP. So I've been doing security now since about 2003. Back then it was just called, I joined the Air Force, and the Air Force kind of began training me down that path. It was called just computer systems operations at that point in time, right? Security wasn't, especially cyber security wasn't a thing. But we started, yeah, exactly. I've been doing it a really long time. The Air Force trained me up, and I did cyber operations within the Air Force for about 11 years.
Wow.
I separated in 2014, moved out, had various positions as information security officer in a couple of locations. I worked as a solutions architect for an organization, an MSP and an MSSP, to kind of provide security services to smaller organizations that maybe couldn't get what the enterprise guys were able to get a hold of, right? This is back in 2014, so it's a little bit of a different world than it is today. But ultimately, a guy that I worked with at that MSSP, and I started a security company specifically focusing on the technical aspects, providing technical capabilities around security solutions, so that you don't have and go buy a security solution and have it just essentially be a blinky box inside your data center or inside of your environment, right? We wanted to make sure that it was actually something that could provide value to our customers, and that was something that was really having an impact in the organization, right? After doing effectively professional services, one-time engagements, as I'm sure a lot of folks here are well identifying with, we got asked to, hey, would you just take this over for us? Would you just start managing this system for us? You know my environment better than I do. You're already doing this for me. Like, I don't want to pay you in one-time engagements anymore. Let me pay you monthly. And we said, okay, yeah, absolutely. We'll go down the monthly recurring spot, right? So we did that for about 5 years, and that's when we got introduced to Green Cloud. In March of 2021, my company, Cascade Defense, was acquired by Green Cloud Technologies, and we became Green Cloud Defense. What that meant for the Green Cloud Technologies partners was now we're able to provide the security solutions and the security managed services that we offered previously to that MSP market. And so we are rolling out or have rolled out as following that acquisition, a managed firewall service specifically focusing on the Fortinet set of products, managed SIEM, managed EDR, and continuous risk scanning. So we've got
let me just stop you
there.
there.
Absolutely.
Continuous risk scanning. Would you equate that to penetration testing, or is that different?
So this is vulnerability scanning, and we were very conscious in how we chose that name. And I think what we want to make sure to represent is that this is a vulnerability scanning platform. We are providing a capability to find the vulnerabilities both externally and internally in your environment. So if you look at your Qualys, your Tenable Nessus, those types of products, this is a solution similar to those. We're using a different platform that helps us to prioritize vulnerabilities and helps the MSPs understand where they need to go and focus their efforts inside of that environment. And what we didn't want to do was say that we're going to manage the entire vulnerability management process, because first of all, that's something that, you know, a lot of MSPs are already doing. Like, we're not trying to take revenue out of your pocket. And to JP's point, like, we are channel focused. We want to make sure that we are not just doing wholesale, you know, margin stacking and, you know, throwing products out there that are, you know, just something you're going to consume and it's not really adding value. We want to be able to provide some additional revenue streams for our MSPs as well. And so the idea of continuous risk scanning is, you know, we're going to go out there, we're going to scan, we're going to help you to prioritize those vulnerabilities, and then give you the optional revenue stream of going out there and remediating those vulnerabilities and coming up with a solution as a partner alongside of your customer to find out exactly how to best remediate that in their environment, and then show that value as their partner in that process.
Okay. So
yeah.
Green Cloud and Green Cloud Defense are under one umbrella, but one is more concentrated on the security aspect, and then Green Cloud is still infrastructure to service, VDI, that whole, you know, like DR strategy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so the idea is that we just all come under one umbrella. So Green Cloud Technologies and Cascade Defense merge to become Green Cloud Defense. So we are all Green Cloud Defense. And I'll let JP kind of give an update, because we've had a lot of news at the end of 2021 as well, as far as that goes. But the whole idea is that, you know, we just wanted to show, hey, we have a security mindset. We are rolling out security products and rolling out security strategy through all of our other existing product set, to make sure that, you know, hey, it's at the forefront of our minds, as it should be at the forefront of yours. And so we wanted to show that as part of the new name and kind of the new structure.
Okay.
And George, I think it's important for us to point out, you know, with the you know, the underlying tone of security being at the forefront of everything today, we firmly believe that each of our partners can consume those security products. They don't necessarily need to consume our cloud-based products, right? So if you had to secure your client's premises, regardless of however many endpoints, or regardless of where those endpoints potentially are, whether it's in a hyperscaler or whatever, that's fine with us. The whole point is take care of your clients, and then they're going to in turn take care of you. To Steve's point about like our growth trajectory, so we joined forces with Cascade, and then at the tail end of last year, and this is super cool news. So before the tail end of last year, we served 6 different geographically different data center spaces here in the US. So we had a US presence, and it was as far east as the Carolinas and as far west as Phoenix. And then obviously top to bottom, we filled in the gaps. Now we joined forces with iLand, based out of Texas, which helps us expand our reach into Canada, helps us expand our reach overseas into the UK and Amsterdam, as well as Australia and Singapore. So very cool things, 100% focused on the channel still, which is great. They were a backup disaster recovery as well as an infrastructure play. So we obviously are the complementary platform for security services. So that's a little bit about the evolution of like what's been happening over here. So big things, needless to say, as we go into 2022.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So basically you now kind of go into all of the, you know, English speaking MSP areas, which is great, because there's a lot of great people that are out of the US, although we love everyone here, especially in Europe and APAC and Canada.
Right.
And like, I'm super excited for things to finally open up, because we miss those people. I mean, I personally would be in these areas multiple times per year, and it's been now a couple of years. I was actually just talking to a good friend of mine, Greg Sharp, down from New Zealand. He actually just sold his MSP base too. You know, it was a pretty successful MSP. He started a MSP vendor. Surprise, surprise. But no, it looks like things are finally, like, I love to see these guys soon, and girls soon, because it's been too long. But all right, so let's rewind, okay? Like, we're hearing security from every angle, right? We're hearing SIEM, we're hearing SOC, we're hearing XDR, MDR, we're hearing, you know, SOC as a service, we're hearing, you know, penetration testing, we're hearing remediation, we're hearing incident response. Like, I could create an entire dictionary, okay, of things that people didn't talk about. Exactly. No, 3 years ago, nobody was like, these were just, what are you talking about? Yep, right? Exactly. We didn't even get the cool, like, new things like SASE and all this new stuff that's happening, right? It's all new. Right?
Terrible name, by the way. Like,
hey, I think Gartner made it up, right? Like,
yeah, I think
not us, right?
Right.
So my point is, like, coming, like, all throughout the 2010s, we were talking about stack, we were talking about what you should offer as an MSP, we were talking about all these things, and then like 2017, 18, 19 showed up, and like bad things started happening to a lot of people. Didn't matter whether you're big, small, in between, government, private, nonprofit, church, doesn't matter. Okay, great, great for, you know, understanding that a new vector has come out that we need to pay attention to. So now this entire additional ecosystem of things, like, almost challenges the traditional stuff that's been happening the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And quite frankly, a couple of things come to mind out of this, and I just want to hear your opinion because everybody else has a different one. One, how much is affordable? I know that's a very vague question, but like, for a non-Fortune company or even a sub 100 employee company, what is affordable, right? I mean, I get different people answer different ways. And then number two is, you know, what is, like, to me, and I finally came to this conclusion myself, like, you know, security and protection. No. Risk reduction. That's how it really is, right? Because there is no 100%. Okay. So, you know, obviously we've seen this at every level. So risk reduction. What is the reasonable amount to spend to get your maximum risk reduction? Because at the end of the day, right, like, you're not going to be able to get the same juice out of the squeeze from a guy down here and a guy up here. It's just the reality, right? So, and then lastly, like, these, you know, I just package these three questions and you guys can go at it. The last thing that comes to mind is, you know, and we talk about this all the time, and, you know, I got Keith on the line here. You talks about this often on these calls, but MSPs sometimes get, you know, very proud of what they do, and they want to, like, make themselves look good, and that's just business, okay? But there's this problem where you can over-present and misrepresent, really, what you are and what's happening and who's responsible. And as a result, these things could potentially put you in a very bad position if and when, okay?
Absolutely.
So, like, I stitched these three questions together because as a business owner or business leader, decision maker of a IT company or managed services company, you need to clearly have an answer of some sort. How much is your customer can afford? And are you being practical and realistic about how you're presenting yourself when you go to put these solutions out there?
Yeah, so, I mean, go ahead, JP.
No, I was going to actually let you kick it off there.
Oh, perfect. Good. You know, I think you've tied together three perfectly, like, those questions perfectly feed into each other, right? In question two, you address the risk piece. Like, that's really all we're talking about. It's reducing business risk. So when you talk about what's affordable, that's going to be absolutely 100% different for every single customer that you deal with, right? Because, you know, you might have and Matt Lee used this on one of our webinars. I know he's a big supporter of the.
We love Matt. Podcast. He's a smart guy. He's here often.
Exactly. He used the idea of like a concrete company, right? Guys that are out there, you know, pouring concrete all day, every day. Now their most critical resource likely is not a server that's controlling, you know, specific concrete trucks, and maybe it's inventory, maybe it's the billing and invoicing side. But their most critical resource is that concrete truck, right? How critical is that concrete truck to their business? If they can't pour concrete, they're out of business, right? So it's a different risk conversation with absolutely every customer you walk into, but you have to go in and set yourself up to have that risk assessment conversation. And honestly, you mentioned it, we're all business owners and we're all doing business risk analysis on every part of our business, whether it's HR, financials, whether it's taking on this customer and knowing that I'm going to have to add a couple bodies on the back end in order to support it, or whatever it might be. Like, we're doing business risk analysis all day long. And this is just another thing you tack on to it. So when you determine what your critical asset is and you determine what the risks are associated with that, that helps you to determine what's affordable, right? And ultimately, you're just analyzing the risk that you have in your environment and reducing as much as possible, getting to that residual risk number until it's something you're comfortable with. And if that residual risk number and the risk to your business associated with that number is smaller than, you know, what the cost of those managed security services or managed IT services as a whole, maybe it doesn't make sense. But if that residual risk number is significantly higher, maybe it makes sense to, take a different look at how you're mitigating or transferring or dealing with that risk.
Let me throw a wrinkle in here because this is interesting.
For sure.
I talk to MSPs all day long, like you, I'm sure. And like when the end users are coming in and like all of a sudden there's this very, very, very detailed, questionnaire going into some sort of insurance situation. And they answer those questions. And then all of a sudden 100-page report recommendation comes out, right? Of like either A, they just tell you can't be covered.
Right.
Or B,
which is happening way more than it used to.
Right. Or B, this very thick recommendation list of 5, 8, 10 things come out.
Yeah.
And then they look at that and they go to their technology consultant, provider, whatever, and they say, hey, can you review this and tell us what does this mean in English, please? Because I have no clue. And then they read it, they go through it, they come back, they sit down and they say, all right, Mr. Customer, all of this is doable. Okay. Like 3 of the 8, 10 things, like we can do on our own. We don't have to charge. There's no cost bearing. We'll just do it. Okay. But like the other 7 things, 10 things are like, so let's just call it 10 just to average up. So like 2 or 3 out of the 10 we can do. The remaining 7 has a cost bearing to it. And by the way, this is what that is. And we'll explain it. Like, let's go down. You need this, you need this, you need this. This person does this person does that. Here's what it's going to cost. It's going to cost you an extra, let's say it's a small business, 25 employees. It's going to cost you an extra $15,000 to $20,000 a year to do these things. Okay. And they're going to be like, okay, that sounds like a lot. And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, you gave us this document, right? Like, we're just telling you this is what it is, right? Like, we're not coming to your head and saying, please buy, right?
You have to do this.
So I was like, if you go back to your, the person who gave you this document, insurance company, whatever, and say, hey, we're only willing to do 3 of this 10. What does that mean for us? Ask the question. Like, I don't know what they tell you. Does your premium triple? Do they not cover you? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just telling you, like, I took your document, I read it. This is what it means. This is what we got to do. Like, this is the type of conversation that's actually happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. George, one of the things that really resonates, and you mentioned it at the very beginning of the 3 questions that you've asked, that I probably have totally fumbled and forgotten all of them, but back in the days of set it and forget it, that mentality is completely gone. The vectors have forced us to live in a world of, it is that constant change that we've always heard about. That's the one thing constant, right? I think for our partners, the MSPs of the world, you owe it to yourselves to understand your clients probably better now, more so than ever. So when they do get that crazy report of these top 10 things, 3 of which they can afford and the other 7, I firmly believe that the MSPs, just like the service providers like us, we need to understand the business impact of what each one of the solutions does. And so that end user who is maybe technically savvy, maybe not, they can easily understand. And you have the ability, and that you actually have, you own the ability to translate what that means as it would relate to their business. So now is more than ever, you have to understand what the business does, their end users.
100% agree. Back to that whole concrete company example, right? So let me just pop in Keith. He's one of our favorite chimer inners.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to build security into the culture, workflows, and business processes. Keith, guess what? A lot of people don't know how to do that. That's the problem. Right. They're too busy making sure the computer got replaced because the hard drive crashed or the firewall needs to be upgraded. They don't even know how to build that culture, okay? They need help. But moving along, he said, we must go beyond reselling technology, but sell business enhancements securely. No disagreement, Keith. Again, how do these people understand or go to learn what it means to do this? I just don't, it's a whole nother education angle that wasn't there before, right?
Yeah.
Then he comes back and says, hey, an example, 2FA with single sign-on properly deployed enhances logins to line of business apps. No question, low barrier, like probably the easiest thing to start putting in. Agree. And then the next one is properly installed email filtering pays for itself by reducing inbox flood, saves labor hours. Again, Keith, but you're pointing back on now the technology products, right? So like we're going like this a little bit, okay?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
So again, my big thing is I love that for the first time in a long time, it went from you as the technology consultant saying, You really need to consider these things, and here's why. We understand that there's a cost involved, and we understand that this may not be something that you've budgeted for, but these things are legitimate concerns. You're asking us for professional advice, and we're giving it. Do what you will, right? Now it's, hey, I need this information all of a sudden because I now need to put this in all, like fast. And you're like, well, wait a minute, what happened between like 3 conversations ago and now, right? Like, did something happen? Like, what brought this on, right? Which, again, I'd say half of the conversations, and I'm just, putting my hand up in the air, half the conversations seem to be coming from this insurance thing. And now all of a sudden, like, it's been flooded with this deeper dive and this recommendation list after a survey is responded to. And I know Keith said, hey, you can, some of the surveys are written in a very black and white way. And like, it's like, oh, you need MFA on all your network appliances. And we're like, what happens if it's an unmanaged device? What if it's like a 4-port dummy switch from like Staples? Oh, please don't do that, by the way. But let's say if it is, right? Like, it's not able to be managed. There's no way for me to do that. But your document says it has to be done. No questions asked. Keith's like, oh, you can talk to them and try and negotiate, educate and negotiate your way through that. I'm going to say most of the time that's not happening. Yeah. So now we're back to, there's this business conversation, which is, all right, you're telling me for this 25-person organization example, it's going to cost me another $15,000, $20,000 a year. Just throwing a crazy number out there, whatever. But the insurance premium, we're talking about the difference between $2,000 a year and $5,000 a year. Right. I'll just pay the $5,000 and I'll just save 10 or 15. Like, this is the actual thought strategy of what's happening here.
Yeah. What's interesting is, all of these changes from an insurance perspective are coming down, right? And they're just telling people, no, we're not going to cover you. And what's happening is that we're dealing with insurance agents. We're not going in dealing with technical people. So when we talk about what our go-to would be in compensating controls and saying, hey, I've applied this, this, and this, and they compensate, and back to that risk conversation, because I always come back to that, but like, here's my residual risk after I've applied these compensating controls. Is that acceptable? That's not a conversation that can be had today because the insurance industry just isn't there yet, right? They're not having these technical people review these responses from organizations going out and looking at this cyber insurance side of things, right? And so, like, it's a very difficult conversation to have with somebody that's just not technical, and talking through compensating controls becomes very, very difficult. And
so Keith actually responded to you in real time. He says, pull rank, it works. Yeah. I talked to an underwriter. I don't know how often you can get to that person. I talked to an underwriter and explained the technology and my education in technology, which always trumps their technical education. I think submitting diagrams showing how things are set up, how I fenced in legacy devices, so on and so forth. That's awesome. I guess if you don't ask, you can't get, but I don't know the last time I've ever heard of anyone getting to the underwriter.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is compliance auditors come in, right? Let's say PCI or SOC 2 Type 2, right? You have this auditor come in. It's easy to have a conversation because they have a security background and say, these are the compensating controls I put in place. Here's the evidence showing that I'm reviewing the logs for this system. Here's, the actual evidence to support my compensating controls are working and that kind of thing, right? And that's a conversation you can have. To your point, when do you ever get to the underwriter? Like the average Joe MSSP owner or MSP owner is not going to have the ability to just run up to their customers underwriter and say, all right, this is what I'm really doing. Will you just agree to this? Because guess what? In another 30 minutes after the phone call they're on with you, they're having the exact same conversation with another customer that's going to do everything that they said, whether truthfully or lying through their teeth, right? And they're just moving on to the next customer. And that's kind of the position we're in right now, is like, if you don't do this, we're not going to cover you. And there's nothing you can do to turn around and change our minds about not covering you. And I think that's the biggest challenge. Like, it's a very difficult thing to navigate. And if you can get to an underwriter and you can pull rank and say, hey, I'm smart and here's why, perfect. That's awesome. Most people, I don't think, are getting to that level and don't have the opportunity to have that conversation, which sucks.
Hey, Hey, Steve, share with everybody something that Keith did point out about sharing diagrams and showing the clients like what you're protecting. Can you articulate though for everybody like how you use infographics to work backwards from the compliance standards to show what people actually are protecting and what you're doing with the tools, right? To make it quote unquote ingestible into the community?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting to the point where we can use our industry standard compliance and regulations to come back and say, all right, I meet this according to my auditors, and here's my SOC 2 Type 2 report. I meet all of these. I've shown the evidence, which is the whole point of the Type 2, right? I've shown the evidence as it exists. Here, insurance auditor, here you go. Take a look at this, make sure it meets your muster, and we can move forward. Working backwards from a compliance framework only works if the people understand the compliance framework, and that's the tough part. But I think you can absolutely do that. And to the point of pulling rank, I think that's how you do that. Like if you have your ducks in a row, and that maybe is the hardest part, but if you have your ducks in a row and say, here's the evidence that I'm doing exactly what I say I'm doing, maybe that gives you a little extra leeway. But ultimately it comes down to that conversation, to somebody's earlier point of what's the relationship between you and your customer from a business perspective, and can you have that frank conversation of, look, the insurance auditor is saying X, Y, and Z, but this is what is truly happening in your environment and why. I have the evidence to support what I'm saying and why the compensating controls are there. Let's go together and have that conversation with your insurance agent, with your insurance auditor, whoever it might be, to hold that conversation together. And if you can do it from a business and a technical perspective, I think that's going to hold a little more weight. But again, it's a tough, and in my opinion, a challenging thing to navigate that insurance piece right now, because like I said, the very next 30-minute call that they're having is just another Joe Blow that's going through exactly the same thing you are. So
Okay.
It's a difficult thing.
Fair.
And
I agree with you, by the way. I think Keith's maybe a special guy. He just knows he like shows up at the office and knocks the door and be like, State Farm guy? Yeah, I need to talk to you. I don't even know if State Farm knows that. But that being said, one of the last questions I had in the three was, how, like, all right, somebody, MSP versus MSSP, this is marketing. It's all marketing, okay? The MSP presenting the vendor's capability as their own, okay? When it's really not them, it's somebody behind them, right? They're not the ones actually doing the constant vulnerability scanning and all this other stuff, but they'll put it on their website as it's them. And then when the inevitable bad thing eventually happens, as it does at some level, then people start asking questions. And those questions start with, but this is what your sign says. What's your advice here?
From my perspective, and this comes to that business relationship with your customer kind of mentality. Like you have to be able to have those frank conversations of, hey, my team is doing X, Y, and Z. I'm not truly the expert in the security pieces that you need, so I'm going to use a company to assist me with that. You will reach out to me and we will work through any security related issues that you might have. But ultimately my team is going to integrate directly, and here's how great the relationship is. And here's the processes we're going to use to make sure it's not a bottleneck or whatever it might be, right? And have those frank conversations and turn around and say, all right, we are providing this service. Ultimately, yes, my head's on the platter, right? But I have done my due diligence. I have vetted this provider. I understand the capabilities, and we've built a solid process to support you in this. And I think that business relationship piece is such a strong thing. Some customers are going to let you do that, some aren't. I don't know that there's an easy way to solve it necessarily. We're doing it successfully with some customers, but they are very open with how the relationship works. Hey, I'm an expert in managing your servers, managing your desktops, providing support to your users. I'm not an expert in security, but these guys are, and that's why I chose them. And here's the solution, right? And that frank, open conversation, while I understand, like, and there are folks that want everything on their paper with their name for the security products and their, it needs to be completely white labeled, 100% white label solution. That's a challenging thing to have when you get to that inevitable situation of having to jump on a call with 15 different people in an incident response, kind of a scenario, right?
So yeah, 100% agree. What do you tell the MSPs out there that are involved or, in incident response work, right? Like when you have an insurance vendor with a policy and you call and report your issue, they probably have people lined up for this, right? So that's why they'll say, probably should make your first call to that, to your insurance company like you would with a car accident. But there are MSPs that actually do incident response work as part of the way that they generate revenue, rebuilding networks and reinstalling from scratch and restoring from disaster recovery to rebuild things after an event, whatever. And that while a lot of that work's happening, it seems like that's not necessarily part of the regular agenda, right? Like as an MSP, if your customer gets hit, yeah, you're going to be part of that, but it seems like that's not really you're part of the entire restoration process, right?
That's correct. And George, it ties back to what Steve was just referring to. It is part of our value prop for the MSPs. But at the end of the day, if I'm a managed services company and I've been transparent with the end users that we're not trying to be all things to everybody, number one, there's very few people that can afford to be all things to everybody, right? And so we want to be seen as that staff aug portion for that. However, when there are remediation efforts necessary and need our managed service company partners to be involved with, that is 100% the ownership. We will provide them whatever it is that looks to be suspicious. They are the folks that are actively going out and remediating. So the face of the client, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a little bit of sense. I mean, listen, a typical IT services company, right, has built up their clientele over years.
Right.
Like those networks, those customers grew. Then the quantity of customers didn't all happen in 1 year. They happened over years. And the nightmare scenario, and unfortunately, we've heard some of this in the last year or two, where like the MSP was targeted and all of their customers got hit at once. They do not have the bandwidth to do that at one shot. They never will.
Yeah, agreed. I agree completely. The one thing that we, when we took a look at adding security services to the portfolio as a whole, right? The idea was you can take bits and pieces that fill in gaps in where you're missing, right? And so to JP's point, like we don't want to be the go-to all security services for everybody, just like we're telling the MSP, hey, you don't need to be everything to everyone, right? Mm-hmm. And we want to fill in gaps where it makes sense. We have purposely built the services to roll into a completely vendor agnostic scenario so that we can provide what is needed for that particular MSP as is needed. And so I think in having that mentality, like it gives us a deeper partnership in, hey, we're providing this one piece and here's exactly the processes for endpoint detection and response, right? This is what we're doing. These are the capabilities we're providing to you because we're giving you this, which includes, a report, a notification when, there's malicious stuff found on a device, some incident response, visibility capability to call our team if you have any questions, support, whatever it might be. Here's everything that you have as part of this service and can push that over to your customers. It doesn't have to be everything, and we've purpose built our solutions so that you don't have to consume everything that we do in order to consume one piece. It's part and parcel, which gives us a lot of flexibility in like every customer situation. Because I think you mentioned it earlier, like MSPs are very proud of what they're doing, and rightly so, right? They've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into exactly what they're doing and the portfolio of products that they're using. We want to just be an augment or an addition, an enhancement to those capabilities that are being offered and not be a drain on the system as a whole. And I don't want you to have to go out and figure out how to roll 200 of your customers that you've gained over the years into a single security solution just because, we're forcing that down your throat. That's not something we want to do. And so it gives a lot of flexibility in how we operate and how we have a relationship with our partners, and then ultimately how they have a relationship with their customers.
I get it. I mean, at the end of the day, Darren, who also is a regular on these with us, he's one to say, not too long ago, I thought, hey, put all my services with one, larger vendor, because then I get better service and this, that, and the other. Is like, but I'm not so sure that's the right way. I don't know if I want all my eggs in one basket now. I want to pick and choose and diversify so that it's not all at risk in one shot.
Yeah, when AWS East goes down and I can't authenticate to my RMM platform, which brings down all of my other security suites, that's a challenge. Like, how do you describe what kind of situation you're in with those customers? I don't want, first of all, a hyperscaler outage to have an impact on every single service that I provide. That is a tough thing to swallow. And who's at fault there, right? You can't just say, well, AWS, hey, it's AWS. The customer doesn't give a
they
shit,
surely
right?
do that, right? They're like, hey, check out this news article. Like, AWS is down. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Your Ring doorbell's down. Your Netflix is down.
Right.
You're like, I think one was like Tinder was down. No, where you're doing that in the middle of the day, but okay, whatever. At the end of the day, like, let's go back to you, JP. Like, so why Green Cloud Defense for your infrastructure provider? And why would you be more resilient than AWS East or West, both who have gone down recently and several times at the end of 2021? What's the difference?
So that's a big follow-up to the Tinder comment you just threw out, George. I
had to throw it out there. Curveball.
I mean, how am I going to? I mean, if Suzanne's watching this, he had nothing. I don't know what he's talking about. So in all seriousness, one of the things when we get that question asked quite frequently, right? I mean, in a lot of it has to do with responsiveness, people, and transparency. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's probably the same value proposition that you're probably selling to a lot of end users, right? The MSP community selling your people. So for example, we are very, we put our people in front of our partners. So when the stuff hits the fan, so to speak, and we're not risk adverse, right? Technology breaks. It's how you respond to it. So we have a team of people that not only help our partners get their clientele into the cloud. We have a team of service delivery people that help with that. So it's not you relying on that. But after you're in there and something does happen, it's how we verbalize and message to you what's happening and the responsiveness of that. And even if a partner is white labeling our solution, I will stand in front of that partner all day long, taking the egg on my face, shielding them from as much of the bad things that could potentially happen. So it's really hard to take on the hyperscalers, but if you think about the predictable billing model versus elasticity and the fact that we are so laser focused on the partner, where we stand in front of people, fantastic. The other things, if you look underneath the hood, you will see enterprise grade hardware that we leverage in all of our data centers. So it's all Cisco, UCS, it's VMware, it's everything that people can understand what's underneath the hood. So when people ask, well, how does it work? And really, what are they using? And who is this Green Cloud? We're using household product names that everybody can recognize and everybody can kind of mentally check the box as us being a top tier provider within the space. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. I mean, I guess because there was so much frequency in such a short period of time with big guys, right? Like then 2021 in just Q4, between Google and AWS in the US, there's like 6 incidents. Big ones, like multi-hour ones, like you couldn't miss it. Okay. So of course you couple that with what happened all throughout 2021, which was very clearly targeted DDoS attacks against telco, internet providers, stuff like that. I mean, the bad guys are clearly getting smarter. And if the big guys are feeling the pain, is it just the shoulder shrug? Do you have strength in, oh, well, the big guy's down, so everybody's down. It's, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. I mean, I don't think
you can hide behind that, right? We all have issues, but you can't let that be an excuse. I don't care how big or how small you are. Some people use that. We prefer not to. We try to figure out how to address the question of how do we become better, even faced with whatever adversity through adversity and whatnot. So people stand in front quite a bit. They rise to the top in bad things. And trust me, the team here at Green Cloud in all 6 facilities that we have here in the US and that we support, we have people peppered through the country. One of the things that you realize real fast is who do you want on that team? If you take a picture of a team, there's probably one person that doesn't need to fit. We try to figure that out early and often and potentially in the interview process. So we have that kind of team member atmosphere. And I'll use Steve's kind of ex-military background, but you want everybody running in the same direction, right? And we can stand behind those partners.
Same team, same fight is the idea we run with, right?
Wow.
Yep.
Same team, same fight until somebody runs away. That's not good. That's life or death stuff, right?
Right.
But I mean, hey, this could be your business running or your business out of business, right? It's a similar idea.
Yeah, I mean, no IT guy wants to go tell that guy who's been, pouring concrete his whole life, who's got shoulders the size of, a lumberjack and he's giant, that, hey, AWS is down, so I can't help you at all. That's not a conversation you want to have. But if you have a team behind you that's saying, hey, this is exactly what we're doing to fix it, that's a little easier conversation to have than here's a news article from bleeping computer or whatever it might be, right? That's a different conversation.
Google News aggregate, right? So then, one of the last big questions that come to mind is, I mean, obviously with the very big popularity of the big guys, right? I mean, I take Alibaba and kind of put them on the shelf, but like Azure, AWS, Google, obviously Microsoft's pretty big staple in almost any IT vendor's, line card, right? I mean, it's just, they are who they said they were. Now, and then obviously they rolled out things like, virtual PC, right? And they've tried to make it a little bit more consumable, right? Why your direction versus something like that?
So I'll take the first stab. Feel free to fill any gaps in, Steve, and you're right. We're not going to outrun Azure. I mean, you can't go through any airport in the United States without seeing cloud-based advertisements, right? I was in Fargo, North Dakota. There's cloud stuff everywhere within that airport. It's unbelievable.
Well,
so
like Great Plains started there. I mean, it's huge.
There you go. It's huge.
Which,
right?
by the way, the Fargo airport's like 2 hallways, right? I mean,
I love it. It's easy in, easy out. If you're late to that airport, that was a big night before. That's the thing.
And they have like a John Deere tractor on the floor when you roll in, right?
No, but so the question for Green Cloud isn't if we can't outpace, outgrow Microsoft's Azure cloud, how do we complement that play? Mm-hmm. And so for our partners, one of the things that we will help with is we will figure out what workloads probably need to come into a predictable billing world of Green Cloud, what makes sense to go to, like, say, an Azure AD. And to your point about Windows virtual desktops, yeah, it's becoming easier, right? It's becoming more affordable. And as the world pivots and turns, I think the MSP space needs to be smart about where they do put those eggs in what baskets, right? And so if you looked at Green Cloud's 6 different data centers, what I tell you is that we have a lot of file, print, line of business application servers, remote desktop servers. We have Windows Virtual Desktop, and the line card goes on and on. However, I would say over the years, we have moved more mail, obviously, over to 365, Google Mail, whatever the case may be. For that very reason, it just makes sense. So the question for us is, how do we complement the MSP and help them make the decisions on where to place workloads?
Okay, fair. So your response is, I got a Swiss Army life, be surgical and be tactical about what you're doing, and then use what fits, kind of thing.
Use what fits and complement the process that the managed service company has invested in to make sure that they're running with complete optimization within their world. If that makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. Keith pops in, I think Darren and I should be complimented because we're handsome and intelligent. Yes, this is 100% true. No argument there, Keith. So now I almost bring it up on every call, but it's pretty much the 700-pound, elephant, NCE, right? Hey, we didn't just raise our prices because we're giving you more stuff. Darren says, at least one of us. No comment, Darren. I'll let you guys fight it out. We don't mind, hey, we're raising our prices. Okay, that happens, right? Like, you do more, you add more value. Microsoft says they haven't raised your 365 prices in 10 years. Okay, great. But when you change the material business model, where you're locking people into terms and you're preventing movement between partners midterm, and you're creating a minimum quantity count because small businesses go up and down, right? That's just the nature of that, that situation. That creates a problem, a business problem for the IT services provider who's pushing the Microsoft Cloud product. So how does that work from your perspective, right? Like, are there, like, is the partner locked into a term? What happens if them and their end customer split up? What happens if somebody goes out of business downstream from your relationship with the partner? Like, these are just the ebb and flow things that happen every day.
Sure. And nobody nobody can run from that, right? So I think let's take a step back real fast. I would say number one, the managed services community needs to make sure that they have some provisions in their agreements that protect them and not lock them into not being able to move in the event that certain cost of goods have changed, right? So, for example, Microsoft, obviously people got hit with Microsoft increase, firewalls of choice, regardless of what flavor they are, they increase their license from year to year or month to month, depending on what that looks like. So you need to potentially have provisions in your agreement that help you. Maybe it's not immediate, maybe it's over a 60, 90, 120 day window, that you can work with your clients to articulate what happened, what the increases are in the business impact back to the end users. And for us as a service provider, we owe it to you, our partners, to do the same thing. So we may take it on the chin, so to speak, for a month or two, but we have provisions within our agreements that say in the event that we are hit with an increase, we will at the right time pass that along, and we over communicate and give a lot of runway to our partners to say, hey, this happened in January. We're giving everybody until, call it the end of February, March, whatever the case may be. So we are firm believers in making sure that we will shoulder what we can shoulder, but at the end of the day, everybody's in business to hopefully make some money. So pass on what you have to, but not necessarily maybe 100% of everything, because it's a journey, right? And it's a partnership between you and your client, us and you guys, etc.
Yeah. I mean, that's, everybody wishes the prices stayed the same until, a change was made. And that's generally how the business has been running forever. We get it, right? Like, over time, costs go up. I mean, I'm not even being political here. It's just, we're in the greatest inflationary period we've probably ever been through in this country. Right
100%.
So, like, I mean, just goods are hard to get, and they're getting more expensive because of the simple supply demand problems, right? I mean, you literally cannot buy cars below sticker value because they can't produce them fast enough because of shortages, right?
Well,
So,
100%. And I would say with end users, share examples of just what you just said, to especially when people start asking the hard questions of like, why me? Why are you increasing my bill? And it's me. I would say, well, let's look around. I mean, I sure wish I had the same cell phone bill that I had like 10 years ago, but I don't, because I have a data plan and I have an X plan and I just keep adding. YouTube TV, they've increased their rates from $49.95 to $65. I mean, the list can go on and on. So nobody is shielding themselves from it. That's for sure. It's how you treat your clients and message it in the meantime.
I agree. Keith comes back and says 3 things. 1, beards rule. No argument there. There's some pretty wicked beards out there. Clearly not here, but they're out there. The next one, he says, this is a for-profit business. I need to work for some profits. Yeah, well, you joke about that with the smiley face there, Keith, but there are a lot of people out there that are working for free. When it's all said and done, and they look at the end of the year, and then they finally do their math because they have to, because the tax man's coming. They're like, oh, I made no money this year.
Yeah,
that sucks. That's a bad story, and that happens way more. Sometimes they're negative, right? That happens way more often than we all care to admit, if we actually talk to the people around us. So you joke, and I'm with you there. But yes, for-profit business for real, but you got to treat it that way. And then he said, so Keith's company actually is a vendor for the Port of LA. And he said, hey, the ports are flowing, but they do have a great system. I'm like, that's right. Keith helps with that. So
I love it.
Hopefully the boats aren't backed up like they were a few months ago, Keith, with like 200 boats backed up. But yeah, bottom line is, predictable costs are important, I think, and understanding how things change over time. And I just think that, back to your point, right? It's about people. Well, I think MSPs, and you probably know this very well because you've been in the business for a long time, like, they want to be able to talk to somebody and have a business conversation, because things happen out of band sometimes, and you can't call Microsoft and really have that conversation, can you?
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah,
that relationship is so big. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, try. You might get a hold of your insurance underwriter before you get a hold of somebody at Microsoft.
I think you're right. I think it's a lot easier to get to to get to George's underwriter before you get to Microsoft. Pete says ports are flowing, but trains are getting ransacked. I mean, if that's a real thing, if we're back to the wild, wild west in 2022 and like people are literally hijacking trains,
That's
Oh,
we got
crazy.
problems.
LA is crazy with that right now. Seeing those pictures is just insane.
I mean,
People are
that
legitimately just stealing goods out of train cars, which is just crazy.
yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. Well, let's just hope technology can help a lot of things.
Right.
And it was very interesting to just talk shop with you guys. Obviously, like these are the real world things that are happening on the street, right? All kidding aside. And I think a lot of people are a little bit behind on it. I really do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they can't catch up, and the education's out there if they want it. But I think they're in the day-to-day course of running their businesses, this stuff's actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I think, sorry,
No,
something
go ahead.
important to note is like, if you don't get ahead of it now, we're not too far, in my opinion. Let's call it 18, 24 months out at best from the government telling us exactly what we have to do. If you get
There you
your
go.
education, if you get your understanding today, you stand a better chance of surviving through what is inevitably coming, because they're getting tired of paying for it. They're getting tired of dealing with it.
Is the government really paying for it now? I'm not sure.
They
Solid
fielded
question.
they fielded the entire CISA organization because of these
Sure.
challenges, right?
Sure. But entire countries have set up like literally virtual armies to start doing
absolutely.
stuff that's
I
happening.
agree.
And like,
Wholeheartedly.
I'm not like what I listen, I'm sure it's top secret, but like I would love to understand how they're actually preventing that.
Where are those tax dollars going? Yeah,
I would
feel
love
you.
to see it.
Yeah,
It's like I'm
I
feeling
don't
like we
disagree.
don't have it.
I don't disagree.
Okay, just checking. Where do people find you guys? How do they get a hold of you? How do they learn more about what you guys do?
Good question. So check us out on the web, www.greenclouddefense.com. You will find out how to engage with us via the partner community. That's the easiest spot. Obviously, we're pretty social, so be on all things social. You can track us down, and George, we will send you our contact information as well after this.
Well, we'll make sure to tag you guys on all of this. We pushed this out as we were going live. This is a great conversation. Sounds like you guys really have a good handle on what the life is of an IT services provider on a day-to-day basis. And, people need help, and it sounds like you guys are a good resource. So, well, appreciate you guys for coming online and talking shop with us.
Yeah.
And I mean, listen, it's going to be the year of the event resurgence, whatever. It's coming back in full tilt. So I'm sure we're gonna see you guys on the road.
Well, what we hope to do is be part of the Channel Strong event. That's our goal. I'd love to be a part of that and join you.
This is music to my ears.
Absolutely.
We would love to see you guys on there.
That'd be great.
Because we're traveling America by bus.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
It looks different. Hopefully the bus doesn't get ransacked.
Great cigar tour.
Like the train. Yeah, the great cigar tour. Keith Nelson, I think you're catching on to something here, buddy.
Exactly.
We're gonna have a whole assortment. Awesome.
Well, thanks, George.
I
Appreciate you guys.
Your time. We'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Yeah. Thanks, George.
All right.
See ya.
Hey, thanks again.